Good morning. So today is July the 4th, which in the United States is also known as Independence Day. And I wanted to talk about that today. What is independence and how does it relate to the Buddhist idea of interdependence? Well, interestingly, my teacher, who is Japanese, knows the words Independence Day. So he came to America some years back. We came together and we went all over visiting different, mostly religious places because that's what he enjoys. And as we drove over Northeast United States, he asked me, why do Americans put so many flags? And felt a little defensive, I was like, um, I don't know. But then I was like, okay, well, it's July the 4th is coming. And he was like, what is July the 4th? And I said, Independence Day. And he knew the words, right? Independence Day. Oh, in his mind, what he envisioned was this movie called Independence Day, which involves a lot of blowing things up and destruction and damage. And that is a very interesting correlation for me, that the American perception of Independence Day is commonly this a very freedom oriented time where, yay, we're finally free of oppression. And his idea of what Independence Day might mean is very similar to the feelings of a lot of people in the United States who have not benefited from independence and who are still living under dominance. So I had to explain to him actually like, no, not the movie, and no, not the blowing stuff up, but people actually celebrate this holiday and it's very meaningful to them. And it means that all, I know it says men, but all humans are created equal, and that we are here to celebrate that. So that is the general idea, right, for Independence Day. And yet, when we really look a little further into it, independence for whom? And what does this mean? We celebrate the Declaration of Independence. Who's included in that? It mentions men. I think women weren't even a consideration at that time. And it's when it says men, it means white men. So does it include indigenous people? Does it include Black people? Does it include women? Does it include everybody? And this is the point I'd like to make today. Until we are all equally freed and have independence, i.e., when we all recognize that not one of us or not one group of us can be freed without also the other groups being free, and thereby shifting from independence to interdependence. None of us are free. What does independence mean anyway? Independence seems, and we might have different definitions, but it has more of a focus on me being free, my independence, or me as a group being free from something. So I'm independent from my parents when I leave home. I'm independent from my job when I leave and work on my own. So a feeling of me, or again, a group of me's, being freed from something else. It has a quality of uniqueness and of making our voice heard. What does that mean, making our voice heard? It has a quality of influencing others. And also, on the other side, not relying on others. No one can tell me what to do. I'm independent. And that leads into control. because nobody can tell me what to do, I have control over my life. And you know, this is a concept that seems to be very important for us, particularly as Americans. And when I traveled, and I've traveled quite a lot, I came to realize that this fierce idea of independence is also particular to Americans. I'm not saying that it doesn't exist for others, but this was often an idea that people from other countries felt perplexed about with Americans. Why are you so focused on independence and what, like, freedom? What is freedom anyway? Like, and it doesn't mean that they don't understand the vocabulary word freedom. It's that they didn't understand why we have such a focus on freedom. So the other thing about independence is, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, independence can really focus on some to the exclusion of others. So if you are in a strong group or a dominant group, then independence can be about protecting yourself. But the thing about independence is sometimes we don't notice who we're stepping on to become independent. And in particular, as I mentioned in our Declaration of Independence, it focuses on white and those who had property. Therefore, those who had privilege, and certainly not women, certainly not Indigenous people or Black people. So in that way, independence actually can be a very selfish perspective or an opportunistic perspective. So we have to really see that and note its importance. Independence is the time that we really move from dependence and really relying on someone else for everything to developing our own values and articulating those. And I believe this is where we are as a country in the United States, figuring out who we are as a country and articulating that and not wanting to be dominated by somebody else and still retaining a sense of freedom for all. But the danger here, of course, is when we become very focused on independence for ourselves, we can step on others. So I think that's where we probably are as a country, is somehow in the narrative that we have been dependent on others and are now independent, we got stuck there. And when we look at stages of spiritual growth, the next stage of growth in terms of spirituality is interdependence. So I'm going to talk about that for a little bit. So we get stuck in independence. We can lose sight of the fact that now we've figured out who we are, and we've actually shifted into being the dominator, to being the dominant voice, to stepping on others. So we must shift our focus, now that we have freedom, into making sure that all beings have freedom. And of course, this is very central to Buddhist teachings. And it's really applicable to the world right now. So let's talk about interdependence a little bit. Interdependence is focused more on our relationship with others and with the world around us than just ourselves. So who am I in relation to others? Who am I in relation to the natural world? And how are they in relation to me? And how are we going to be in this together in a way that doesn't step on any particular person or group or the world that we live in? Because we are all in this world together. Interdependence requires compromises and making adjustments. So of course we have this I. I want this. I want to be in control. And we have to learn to notice when my need for control steps on your need to be free. In this way, we're mutually dependent. We're dependent on each other. I was thinking this week about my third grade teacher. My third grade teacher, and I couldn't remember her name right now. Hopefully it will come back. My third grade teacher had us all stand up, little third graders, and she said, I want you all to stretch out your arms as far as you can reach. And she had us all stand up and do this. We all stretched out our arms. And she said, you have the freedom to do whatever you want, as long as your freedom doesn't interfere with somebody else's freedom. And she had us stretching out our arms to demonstrate this. So she would say, you have the freedom to stretch out your arms as far as you like, but they can't touch somebody else's arms and interfere with their space. And so as we tried it out, what we found is that we pulled our arms in more, like there wasn't enough space. We still felt like a little space in here, but we had to adjust, right? So interdependence requires adjustment. So that lesson really stuck with me as a little kid. And I thought about it more and more. And I was like, okay, so this is arms. What about voices? What if my voice interferes with that person's silence? And also, what about emotions? What if my anger interferes with that person's peace? Do I have the freedom to be as angry as I want if it interferes with this person's quiet? Do I have the freedom to be as loud as I want if it interferes with their silence? And I thought about this in so many different ways. It was a real, like a puzzle for me as a little kid that I just couldn't let go. And I would say that it's influenced my entire life, that idea. You have the freedom to do whatever you want until it interferes with somebody else's freedom. This is interdependence. Because really, at what place is there a separation between you and me? Even at this very moment, we are literally connected as the sound of my voice goes into your ears and connects with your mind. We are literally in this together. We are not separate. So interdependence takes adjustment, compromise, and relationships with others. It takes noticing those who don't have as much freedom as well. Because again, until all beings are free, none of us are fully free. So if my independence requires stepping on your independence, then it's not true independence. So on this Independence Day, what does that mean for us as a country? What does that mean for us as human beings? What does that mean for us as Buddhist practitioners? When we shift from independence into interdependence, we shift from this period of really, developing our own values and learning to articulate them and to even to stand up for ourselves when needed. We shift from that to the great wisdom that flows through the entire universe. That whole of the universe becomes accessible to us freely. So when we give up the idea of my and mine, we get a connection with every single thing in the universe. When we give up the idea of my or me as a separate being, we also let go of the source of our suffering itself. Because this clinging to me, to the way I think it should be, is what causes not only others harm, but ourselves harm, because it prevents us from truly connecting. I really like this passage in this book, The Heart of Understanding by Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh, and I wanted to share it with you. I love it so much. I read it frequently. Of course, Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh is a poet, so we get a very beautiful expression of the idea of interdependence, which he calls interbeing. If you're a poet, you'll see clearly that there's a cloud floating in this sheet of paper. Without a cloud there will be no rain. Without rain, the trees cannot grow. And without trees, we cannot make paper. The cloud is essential for the paper to exist. If the cloud is not here, the sheet of paper cannot be here either. So we can say that the cloud and the paper are. Interbeing is a word that is not in the dictionary yet, but if we combine the prefix inter with the verb to be, we have a new verb, interbe. Without a cloud, we cannot have paper. So we can say that the cloud and the sheet of paper are. If we look into the sheet of paper even more deeply, we can see the sunshine in it. If the sunshine is not there, the forest cannot grow. In fact, nothing can grow. Even we cannot grow without sunshine. And so we know that the sunshine is also in this sheet of paper. The paper and the sunshine are. And if we continue to look, we can see the logger who cut the tree and brought it to the mill to be transformed into paper. And we can see the wheat. And we know that the logger cannot exist without his daily bread, and therefore the wheat that became the bread is also in this sheet of paper. And the logger's father and mother are in it too. When we look in this way, we see that without all of these things, this sheet of paper cannot exist. Looking even more deeply, we can see that we are in it too. This is not difficult to see because when we look at a sheet of paper, here, the sheet of paper is part of our perception. Your mind is in here with this sheet of paper. You cannot point out one thing that is not here. Time, space, the earth, the rain, the minerals in the soil, the sunshine, the cloud, the river, the heat. Everything coexists with this sheet of paper. It's Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh on interbeing, interdependence. So interbeing, just that we are together, also means that we are interdependent, that everything we do is dependent on everything others do. And this is the real goal. What if Independence Day became Interdependence Day? What would that look like? Not just in America, but in the world. What would Interdependence Day mean for the world around us? So if we were interdependent rather than independent, what would it mean for the world's resources? If we were interdependent instead of independent, what would it mean for the world's people What would it mean for our people? Even going back to the source of the United States, to the very beginning of the country, what if we recognized everything that made this a country, not just some? What if we recognized the native people who were already here when the white people came on ships? What if we recognized the Black people who were brought over involuntarily on ships to grow things for the benefit of the white people? What if we recognized the women who were taking care of the families, feeding the families, making the babies? What if we recognized the women who were unseen, who are an integral part of building this country? It's all here in what we now call the United States of America. All in the mix. And good things are in here, and terrible things are in here, and neutral things are in here. And it's all here. What if we acknowledged that and honored that? This part of American history, the part that we call slavery, or the part that we call indigenous genocide, this was a terrible part. This part of American history, the spirit of wanting a better life for all beings, the spirit of throwing off a monarchy and making everyone equal, this part is fabulous. And what if those could learn to be in harmony with each other? We don't have to throw out the things that happened that were bad. We do have to acknowledge them and bring them into the full picture. This is what we have to work with. This is our karma. It's just here. Wanting it not to be here doesn't make it go away. This is what we have. So starting by just acknowledging and honoring that is part of interdependence. Because, we've gotten really used to a mindset that thinks of ourselves only. My freedom. I want it this way. I deserve this. Even it's very apparent with the COVID-19 virus, even just the simple act of protecting others by wearing a mask. People feel that infringes on their freedom. And this is a very self-centered perspective, because how can your freedom be separate from others' freedom when your freedom can literally kill somebody else? Interdependence requires noticing. Where does our freedom end? Where does our freedom infringe on other people's? If our very breath can kill another human, then is it so hard to contain it so that we all can live together in peace and in harmony and just live so that we all can be alive together as one nation? Interdependence requires flattening out true equality for all, not some false equality where some are above others. And this takes really opening and cultivating the habit of interdependence, which is challenging to do. We've been talking about this over the last few weeks. We can get really stuck in our own mindset, in our very protected bubbles, people who look like us and think like us, where it feels more safe, and completely forget about all the others who are around us. So interdependence requires widening our vision and noticing noticing everything in the universe, not just our own perspective. And as we widen, we get the wonderful gifts that come with it. We get an America that's rich and complex and continuously evolving and growing, not stagnant and stuck in one place. We get this very beautiful fabric of a country rather than a very old quilt that's already falling apart. We get this regeneration of new voices and new people, even as we reconnect with old voices that have always been here. If we could honor the people who were here before us, we could truly respect them, what would that give to us? A life that's so much more rich and so much more free. This is true freedom. So let's think about what freedom really is. When are we truly free? When will we be able to truly celebrate freedom? True interdependence. This is what I would like to leave you with today, an open question as you go about your day. A day in which some are celebrating, some are grieving, some are angry. A day in which some families are having picnics and watching fireworks. A day in which Native people are bereft with their sacred sites of the Black Hills literally carved into and being desecrated. A day in which Black people are wearing clothing of mourning. Even fireworks. At what point does the beauty and the excitement of fireworks infringe upon the freedom of others? Make it harder to breathe. Make the pets of the world truly terrified. How can we be independent in a way that looks towards freedom for all beings rather than freedom for only this being? Thank you.